Really need to clear the air and get down to the bottom of what's been happening here. The misinformation suggesting that the ban on international rhino horn trade had been lifted. That's not the case. It remains prohibited. Magdel Boshoff from Government's Threatened or Protected Species Policy Development joins us to clarify what's going on here. Very good morning to you. So, from what I understand, it is legal in South Africa but not internationally. Is that it?
Good morning. Yes, that is correct. A person can trade domestically within the country with rhino horn, but internationally it can be exported. What I want to clarify is that it can be exported for non-commercial purposes only, but commercial trade is the part that is prohibited internationally.
Okay, and why?
That is in terms of the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, or CITES. South Africa is a signatory to this convention. And in terms of the convention, anything that is included in Appendix 1 of CITES, and those are generally the species that are threatened with extinction. Commercial trade in those specimens of those species included in Appendix 1 would be prohibited for commercial purposes. Now, for commercial purposes, it would be, for example, if a person would, say, for example, export rhino horn from South Africa and import it into his country of residence, and there then sells it to derive an economic benefit. So that is the commercial part. So
okay, but that sounds rather murky, doesn't it? I mean, I'm sure that's something that could be easily confused, abused.
The provisions are quite clear, but that is why we try to clarify as far as possible when would something be commercial and when would something be not commercial. What is important to notice is that the purpose for commercial trade or non-commercial trade is determined in the country of import. So what happens in that country? So an example of non-commercial trade would be if someone hunts a rhino in South Africa and exports the horn as part of the hunting trophy, because the hunter intends to keep that trophy for himself. So that would be non-commercial.
Okay, and why, I know that you've got CITES concerns, but why don't you open this up? I mean, there are a lot of private farms looking after rhino. They are making sure that we have them for generations to come. By selling this horn would put a lot of money back to them. And we know for a fact, it's been proven, that rhinos who've had their horns removed are much safer. I mean, there's no point in hunting them.
That is true. And we over the last couple of years, we've been putting a lot of measures in place, because when we make a proposal to a conference of the parties where all the other member countries will gather and meet to discuss proposals, we need to have a watertight, scientifically proposal, and also from an enforcement point of view. So we would need to justify that commercial trade wouldn't be detrimental for the survival of the species in the wild. We would need to be able to indicate that we have poaching under control. So there's a lot of factors that need to be considered for us to make a proposal. And then when countries consider the proposals, it needs to be adopted or approved or accepted by 2/3 majority of the other members. Now, what I want to get to is over the last couple of years, we have put a lot of measures in place to address the gaps that we had. For example, our enforcement capacity that we strengthened at the airports. We have looked at strengthening our ability to trace the movement of rhino horn. So we implemented a DNA sampling method. We established a national database with auditings that we're doing. And one of the measures was to implement domestic legislation to strengthen the provisions of what a person needs to comply with locally to sell a horn and then for a horn to be exported. So at the moment, what is happening is that the minister recently, at the end of last year, she established a high-level panel to look at certain management issues around elephant, rhino, leopard, and lion. And one of the issues for considerations by this high-level panel is the feasibility of trade for international commercial trade in rhino horn. So we are waiting for the outcome of this high-level panel and the recommendations that they will be making around this, whether we are ready or whether we should be able to put forward a proposal for international.
I mean, obviously there are a lot of considerations, because I suppose when the rhino horn is crushed, you don't know whether it's legit or poached, you know. But once this does go through, whenever that might be, it'll increase the value of the rhino as well, won't it? Which will help its protection again in the long term.
Absolutely, because if there's a legal supply that we can provide, we are hoping that that would reduce the need for poaching, because it's a product that people want, whether they can get it legally or not legally. So yes, absolutely, we are hoping that or we are convinced that if we can provide a legal source, that would take away the need for illegal poaching.
Magdel Boshoff, very good to talk to you. Thank you very much.